Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dodgeball Podcast. In this episode, we'll be recapping the events of the Elite West Region Round 2 tournament that took place last weekend. And here to help me do that is no stranger to the podcast, Allyn Thomas of Reignbros. Allyn, thank you so much for being available this week. I'm not really sure what's going on with people. They're either unavailable or playing dodgeball or maybe recovering. But, right now it's just you and me. And with that, we'll just go ahead and get right into it. Go ahead.
I'm not suited for much else right now. My back is killing me. So this is great. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So actually that's one thing I wanted to ask. It's as we're recording this, it's Wednesday. It's it's 4 solid days since the tournament. How are you holding up? Are you sore like everyone else, or?
I felt as the tournament ended, I felt great. We had a really nice after party. The bar was crowded, and there wasn't enough bartenders, but it was an awesome atmosphere. There was karaoke going on, so we had a ton of fun, and I felt amazing. The next day my shoulder kind of felt tight, and then in the last 2 days my back has kind of developed a big old knot on the right side, kind of right under my shoulder blade. So I'm a little sore, but given the situation, I think I can deal with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just love seeing the "oh my god, I'm so sore" posts in my team chat with Grit. Somebody signed up for like a 9-mile tour of Portland, and they're like, "I don't know why I thought this was a good idea, but I regret everything," and so that just compounded to the soreness. But it's always, I don't know. I enjoy the post Elite Dodgeball soreness. There's nothing out like it. You're miserable. Everything hurts. You feel like you're 90, but you know that you put some work in. Do you normally get sore, or is it recent?
It's kind of is dependent on the tournament. So this year we're playing without Lucas, who is kind of one of our primary arms. So last year, round 2 in San Jose, we didn't have him, and so I did a ton more throwing, and I was pretty wrecked. That was actually probably the most my shoulder and my arm were ever sore after a tournament. And I've been having troubles with cramps late in tournaments lately. And so I deal with that. And anytime you get to the point of cramping, you're going to usually have muscle soreness the next day, or at least the next day. But actually, this was the first tournament I have dealt with no cramps. Really, at no point did I cramp when I was jumping, running, throwing, nothing like that. And actually, I think a lot of other people had that problem. So maybe something to be said for the home court advantage of just sleeping in your own bed and not having to worry about travel really paid off for me. So I felt great during and since, other than the back issue.
Gotcha. And so there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to have you as part of the recap. Even when we're just looking at a panel, and that was because obviously, like you said, you kind of had the home field advantage, and you did talk about that, I believe, when we had our interview podcast, where you're going to get a full night's rest and you're not travel weary. You're in your own bed, so to speak. Do you feel like a lot of the other Portlanders or I call them oreganoes, but Oregonites, or do you think other people had that advantage?
Oregonians is the official term.
Oregonians. Got it. Yeah, do you feel like the other teams had that advantage over, I guess, the reverse, where they're usually traveling to LA or San Diego?
I can't speak for them directly, but I can say based on the bracket finishes or the round robin seeding, Downpour seeded second in co-ed, and in open here. Let's have a look at that. They seeded decently. Looks like 10. So not terrible, not great. Maybe actually a little lower than that. It's hard to read these. So I guess in round robin in co-ed they did really well. We seeded 4. In round robin and open, and we also seeded pretty well in co-ed, which is pretty strange for us. Actually, we usually seed terribly in co-ed. So I don't know that we felt the effects during round robin, but I can definitely tell you at the end, in the crunch time, it was a marked change from how I normally feel.
And do you think there was a emotional stake with when playing, but you've got a bunch of people from LA, Arizona, San Diego. Arizona's not a city. Phoenix, I guess I should say, coming to your home turf, to brawl. Did you guys feel like you had something to prove, or was it just a regular other tournament for you guys, or what'd that feel like?
Well, it was an interesting experience because that gym is actually a gym we've played in for years. We don't play there regularly anymore, but we've held practices there. I mean, every one of us on Reignbros, with the exception of Britt, who was our third girl we added for this tournament, just to be safe in co-ed, because Kate had an ankle injury. Every one of us on that team had won a championship, in our league in that gym. In a big Saturday tournament, double elimination, similar kind of circumstance. So, maybe not the scope, but definitely something Ricky said early on was you've all won here before. You know what it's like. It's familiar territory. So if you combine that with, especially in the co-ed situation, the fact that whenever we play Rise, which has happened a few different times in finals now, we're always kind of the favorites. So the crowd favorite, and double that with the fact that we had more people from Portland and Seattle there, who I'm sure were hoping to see us win and not have Rise take another one. That definitely gave us an extra charge, I'd say.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was wondering if were there a lot of spectators? Because you had mentioned, I think your coworker or one of your former supervisors was asking about when do you play again, because they would actually want to come see you play. Were there any spectators for this round?
Yeah, actually, we had a good chunk of the Portland Dodgeball community who weren't playing in this tournament come and check it out. Even some of our really old school players, some people who, one of the guys who traveled for NDL back in the day, we call him Wisconsin. He was even there for a couple hours to check it out, see what was going on, and he cheering us on and stuff like that. There was a good amount of spectators, but also there was just the way the court was set up at the end. It was right next to a set of bleachers, so there was a place where everyone could sit and watch, which is great. Yeah, there was a good amount of people. The open one really had a big crowd around it, both for women's finals and open finals, but at co-ed ended at about 9:30. I think about 9:30 at night. It ran pretty long. So I think almost everyone who wasn't a player was asleep by then.
I was trying to catch some of the streams. I wasn't there for I was there for a wedding, or I wasn't there because of a wedding. And it's funny because, and I think in the first 4 or 5 podcasts, I'm like, yeah, I get to go to all the elites, and then, oh yeah, I forgot I committed to this wedding a year ago. So obviously that didn't happen, but I was trying to watch and stream and see what was going on. And I think the last thing I saw was Titan and Doom going at it for a round, or for the finals. And then co-ed started, but then it just kept going, and I don't think it ever ended. And I was like, it's 7:30 p.m. Are they still playing out there? And it was that just because there's so many teams, or was it just a packed event? I mean, I'm looking at the bracket here, and I think there's 28
teams in co-ed, which is crazy, and there was 21 in open. So yeah, I mean, it went on forever. They broke it into 3 pools. The 29 was broken into 3 pools, and you played all the teams in your pool. And then the double elimination, there was a lot of courts, but there was a couple of rounds of the bracket play that got kind of held up. Refs weren't necessarily getting to courts the way they were supposed to in the bracket. The ref assignment wasn't always super clear. It was kind of just on players at that point to come out and ref. So that was a little rough, and it caused one round of our games to specifically get delayed because the refs that had filled in to ref a game were a little bit in over their heads. So actually, me and Sean stepped in to ref that one while ours couldn't start yet because no refs had come to do it. And so that pushed one game back that needed to happen for another game to happen. So that probably caused a bit of the delay.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was talking to, when I did the recap with the guys from the South, they actually had to cut the championship short, or they had to cut a lot of it short for their final division. And not insinuating this by any means with the West Coast or with the West region, but a lot of teams were just kind of lollygagging and not being on top of their reffing assignments, and so that can definitely impact how late a venue goes. And I guess fortunately for Portland, they didn't have a birthday party or a dance right afterwards. Sounds like you guys were able to play until the very end, where that wasn't really the case with the South.
That's a bummer. Yeah, I wouldn't say actually the reffing was the problem throughout this one. That one situation caused a problem, but I would say towards the middle of round robin for co-ed, a lot of the teams were starting to drag their feet. There's a lot of I guess complaints, I would say, or discomfort with the gym. In Portland, most places don't have air conditioning because it really doesn't get all that hot here, or at least traditionally it never did.
Right.
The last few years it's kind of been, it seems warmer, at least as someone who's lived there forever, but so it tends to get pretty hot in a gym, that has 100 some people playing sports in it, and there's not really good circulation. But it really, honestly, San Diego last year felt way worse to me. But I guess a couple people got heat exhaustion, kind of were like passing out almost, or things like that. I'd heard stories of, but I wasn't familiar with any specific examples. So I think maybe in the middle of round robin of co-ed, a couple of the teams were dragging their feet to get to where they were supposed to be.
Gotcha. So, like you said, it wasn't necessarily the reffing. Maybe it was just, I won't say like heat exhaustion, but it was just wearing down on people. I did catch, I don't want to say I caught wind, but there were some people that were definitely complaining about the humidity. And it's funny because, like, I'm looking at all the lovely pictures of people having fun in Oregon. It's just green, it's grassy, it's beautiful blue skies, a lot of weird stuff going on, a lot of like voodoo donut, posts and whatnot. But when I was in Oregon during my time out there, I thought it was like, oh wow, they don't even need AC. Whereas here in Arizona, especially Phoenix, it's you have to have AC or you're gonna die. You can't just
right, yeah, absolutely.
You can't get along without it. And it's funny because people do talk about like the San Diego round 3 of last year as being super humid, and I cannot for the life of me remember it being humid. I just remember just being out of the game for so long. I was just naturally sore from that, but it also had just come from the south, so maybe it was different, but
that could be it. Yeah, I got chided for deflating balls in a humid gym especially, but really any time you're playing dodgeball, the balls tend to get warmer as you play with them, and if the gym's warm, then it's doubly bad, and they tend to kind of get a little overinflated just from the heat. So I usually carry a needle and deflate the balls as needed, and apparently a few people complained to Mark. So he had to tell me to stop. So I went and found 2 overinflated balls that I would deflate had he not told me to stop, and and got permission to continue based on my judgment, I suppose. But so that was the biggest thing I noticed in any gym where it's too hot, is the balls tend to overinflate just on their own, with no outside interference.
Right. Did you ever get like, I almost hate to bring it up, like Deflategate accusations?
Oh, people say that all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I play on a flag football team, and we play with our ball slightly deflated just because it's easy to throw. And I also throw a football very hard. And so, like, if I were to line up and throw at one of our players with a fully inflated, like, rock hard ball, I could easily break a finger. And our goal is not to break any fingers during flag football. So
that's hilarious. I'll have to see you throw a football. I want to see how far you can throw. I humbly challenge you.
All right, you're on.
Probably going to regret those words. Well, I kind of want to go back to what distinguished round 1 from round 2. And, obviously, I'm asking a lot out of you to kind of just recount both co-ed and open. And I definitely do want to spend some time with co-ed, but going back to the open division, right out the gate, did you notice anything different between the teams that showed up for round 2 versus round 1, as far as, like, I don't know, teams that came out swinging, had better showing? What did you notice?
Definitely some teams had better showings than they did in the prior round. I mean, Titans, the obvious, I would say offender there, because
Absolutely.
So they made a couple roster changes. They added Tad, which is a local player, and I mean, good news for him. I think he played on wild cards in round 1. And not to rip on wild cards, but I mean, that's not a long-term solution. That's a team for players trying to get good and trying to find teams. So I think they understand that. So if Tad can find a spot on Titan, like, ultimately that's good for him. And I think it's probably good for Dodgeball. They also added Colin, I think it's Colin O'Brien, Dynasty, Dynasty's captain maybe. And so that's not necessarily something you want to see in a round, is a team that should be in the top 4 but wasn't, adding another top 4 out of region player. But either way, it worked out for them. So they managed to come in second after a pretty early push down to the consolation, or I guess losers bracket, secondary bracket. Let's see, they dropped their first. They won their first game against Grit and then ran into the Doom Train, which, okay, I guess that it makes sense why they went down so early. It looks like they went down 2-1, and that put them in a match against Downpour, who they beat, and then they had to play us. We had also gotten knocked down pretty early by Tutha, who put on a great show. They made it to Doom in the semifinal of the winners bracket, and then they ended up finishing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tied for 5th. So good for them. I mean, that's a good showing for them. They're definitely making progress from a disappointing round 1. We knocked Fortune down, which is good for us. They were ahead of us. You know, not that finishing where we did is necessarily great, but it's always good when you can take down a team that's ahead of you. Arsenal, who was ahead of us, also dropped very early, which is a plus for us. And so we then played Titan in a tough match, a 2-1. In the first game of that we did not win. We had a brutal call go against us. Everyone should watch that match as an example of maybe a referee situation and how to deal with it if it ever happens to you. Not to criticize those refs, but something that doesn't happen very often could be learned about from that match for sure. They took us out, and then they took out Gridlock, who had another pretty good showing, unfortunately, as they're ahead of us as well. And then they took out Riot, who had a great showing. Congrats to them. If you're talking about teams that really stepped up their game, Riot coming in 1, 2, 3, 4 there is pretty impressive. And then Titan took out Rise 2-1, and then got knocked out promptly by Doom 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, it's freaking Doom, man. They just, I don't want to say they can't be beat, but I mean, they just, something's got to give. It's great that, you know, Titan did whatever they needed to do to do better. I'm kind of surprised to see that Arsenal got taken out so early. I want to say, yeah. Does that imply that Downpour has improved over the past couple months, or?
That's tough to say. Downpour isn't a team you can slouch on, that's for sure. But both of them, Arsenal got a bad seed in round robin. It looks like they were in the double digits. They played Riptide first, and their second match was Rise. So, I mean, either one of those teams going down to the losers bracket early is a disappointment for them, and you don't expect it of Rise. They ended up in the winners final and taking third place. So then Arsenal dropped down. Downpour dropped down in their first match against Riot, and then I mean that's a tough one. If you're saying Arsenal and Downpour, these are all the same round matchups in the losers brackets. You have Arsenal and Downpour, Double Tap and Fortune, Riptide and Grit, and Wildcards and Havoc. I would say that of this, as far as top quality teams, I mean probably the top 4 teams in that grouping. Arsenal and Downpour are in the top 4, so that's tough that they had to play each other in that match when there's, you know, teams like they could have just as easily been matched up against Wildcards or Riptide or Double Tap, which are all much newer teams.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's I'm looking at my team here, Grit, and I think they had some kind of weird call against Riot. Like people out of bounds or something happened, but they said that they felt better, and I think that's a better showing than when I would play with them in round 1.
But if you look at it that way, they went down to the 4th place team. So the team that they lost to, you know, beat Havoc, beat Tutha, and then lost to Titan. So they definitely made a show. And then, you know, it always makes you feel better, I guess, if you lose to the team that does well. You know, I guess we lost to Titan and they got second. So cool, yeah. But you don't get extra points.
Exactly. You don't get points for feels. It reminds me of that one time when we beat you for co-ed, and then we just got completely destroyed by Echo, and it was just like, oh, sorry.
We've all been there, yeah.
It's probably not how you wanted it to happen. I think about that almost every time I see you guys in co-ed.
So Heat's another team that brought in an out-of-division player. They brought in Sean Wheeler from Brick Squad in the East.
Oh, cool.
It looks like they seeded very well. They had double tap in their first round and then lost to Gridlock. And then in the losers bracket, they immediately went out to Havoc. So that didn't work out quite as well for them as it did for Titan to bring in someone out of division.
That brings a good question. Was there anybody else that came from other regions other than Heat bringing in Sean Wheeler and was it Colin O'Brien that Titan brought in?
Yeah. Those are the only two I recall. Those are the only two that I recall. And then they both of those two played on Force in co-ed, which we'll get to in just a minute.
Gotcha. Let me just take a look at this bracket here and see. I wonder what. I almost say I wonder what happened in Gridlock, 'cause that sounds bad, but they had a great showing, taking third last round.
That sounds right.
And I think maybe what just happened was Titan woke up and said, no, we're definitely part of the top three.
It could be that. I didn't see that game, but Gridlock is an interesting team. They knocked their first round matchup was Fortune, which was as far as seeding goes, an upset, and then they beat Heat, which as far as seeding goes was an even bigger upset. Then they lost to Rise. When I've watched Gridlock play, I'm always confused when we lose to them, and then when I watch them lose. When they lose, it seems to be just that it almost looks like they got space jammed. Like they just kind of forget how to play, and then they get beat. But then they'll play another team, and it looks like they've got Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley, and they're crushing people, and then the next round, all of they just kind of step out of bounds, like all sorts of weird things happen. So we had a chance to play them in round robin of Open, which is something we definitely wanted to get revenge on our loss, and it just was a completely different game than when we played them in the bracket the tournament before. So they're a strange team. I'm not sure what the cause of that is, but I could imagine it looks like it's tough to read this year. It looks like it could have been 2-0 based on what the other ones look like and what that looks like. So it could have been in fact, it looks like it was 1-2. It looks like someone wrote it backwards. It could have been anything.
For which round or which matchup?
Gridlock versus Titan in the losers.
Oh yeah, I want to say it's 2-1.
But it looks like Gridlock got the 2.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Probably just.
So who knows what happened there? But that's kind of my take on Gridlock. It's always kind of strange to watch them lose after they win commandingly against what I would consider a really good team. They looks like they beat Fortune 2-0 and then Heat 2-0 and then they got 2-0'd by Rise. So how 2-0 against two very good teams and then 0-2 against another. It's
got to be like a psychological thing against potentially Rise or Doom. I like the analogy where we got space jammed, because even as Evil or as Titan, anytime I faced off against Doom, we'll have that occasional like really good showing where we did well, we fought hard, and we maybe took a couple off of them, or we may have actually beat them, at least in like round robin play. But then sometimes it's like, I forgot how to play dodgeball. I don't, like, my shoes are on backwards. Like there's just some kind of weird thing that happens where we're just like, I don't even know what happened. Like I knew we lined up. Next thing you know, we're all in the queue and watching, the final game after like 30 seconds. Real quick though, did you notice anything from Rise? How they looked? Because I don't. They
were good. They lost 2-1 to Titan. I didn't watch the match in Open. They were playing in round robin without Allyn Stott, who was banned from round robin, which is sort of a punishment that makes no sense to me. But they still ended up with a great seed. They were still the let's see here. It looks like the 2 seed. So really, playing short a player, it didn't cost them anything in round robin, wow. Which is good, because that's the kind of negative of that kind of punishment. If you take away a good player and you lower that team in the seeding, some other team that performed better is going to get a worse matchup, which is not what you want, which is why that kind of punishment makes no sense to me. Say they drop to the 10th seed because of that, and then some team that got, the 12 seed, that's pretty good for that team probably that got the 12 seed, but now they have to play Rise in round one. And like, how, is that really what they worked hard to get? No, they should have had to play a team in that range like Arsenal or something like that.
Yeah, it's not quite the reward you would expect. I wonder what happened.
Well, if you're asking about what happened to Allyn, he got caught, I guess, vaping in the gym or something, and so they hit round one.
Huh. Okay.
But they rolled through the bracket, 2-0 Arsenal, 2-1 Riot, 2-0 Gridlock, 0-2 Doom, and then 1-2 lost to Titan. So they looked fine. We played them in round robin, and they, I'm pretty sure they smoked us. They were the second seed. Excuse me. They were the second seed. Doom was the first seed, which I think still means that the only team to beat Doom this year is us in round robin at round one.
Jeez.
So again, feels good, but worth nothing.
Yeah, it's pride points, I guess.
Yep.
Well, cool. So we kind of, went through the bracket. We spoke to some teams. Did you happen to notice any like phenomenal players or anybody that stood out from Open? And this could be your own team, it could be yourself, just from your perspective.
Well, Greg Long in the bracket, he's our one of our rookies. We have 2 rookies to Elite this year. Greg is one of them. I guess technically not a rookie. He played 1 round last year at round 3 on Velociraptor. He definitely played well in Open, much better than his first tournament. We're still trying to lock his throw in, but he probably led the team in catches in round robin, which for people who know Greg's play style, that's kind of funny. It doesn't seem like something you would expect. But he picked us up in some really big games. And in our elimination to Titan, it was the third game was him one-on-one against Tad. And probably not a move I would have recommended he make, but he got the bait catch that he wanted. He dropped for it, and he just couldn't bring it in. He was right there to be the hero to bring us over that match against Titan. So that's how close they were from going out 7th or whatever and going out 2nd, which is what they ended up.
Gotcha.
Some other players, Ketchum's lost a lot of weight. If you haven't seen him in a while, he's trimmed off about 40 pounds. I didn't really notice a difference in his play style necessarily. His accuracy didn't seem maybe to what it was normally, but we only played him a little bit. Two that really looked like they'd stepped their game up. Their left corner, if you're looking from the opposing side, he's on the right. I believe his name is Daniel Ariellano, something like that. He's got an arm, and he's learning dodgeball more, so that's good for him. And good for that team.
Is he the guy that there's a clip right now of somebody throwing at
it bounced? Yeah, Kyle Socio, it bounced off his chest. Yeah, he's the thrower in that clip.
Okay, I know who you're talking about then. Yeah, catch him losing weight. He's in the gym a lot because he tells me this for some reason, and but it's good that it's paying off. Also, just kind of terrifying, but whatever. Good for him.
He can lose all the weight he wants if he doesn't learn how to play dodgeball. We'll still be okay.
Yeah, just the thought of him throwing harder or having more stamina is just kind of unnerving. I wanted to ask about another player, but they lost some. Oh, I wanted to ask how Heat did. Mostly because that's another Arizona team that's kind of like, coming into the elite fray a little bit more. You've got the foam players like Dylan and Randy and all them. Did you notice them by any chance?
We have still yet to play Heat in their current version. We played them as New Breed last year, a couple times, and I have a lot of respect. I think Isidro is a very, I guess I can't say underrated necessarily because I don't really know what he's rated, but I'd say he's a very good player. But they did not have the showing they were looking for. I can tell you that by the bracket.
Yeah.
So they were seeded really well. If I was to try to decipher these tiny numbers, it looks like they're seeded 3rd. So, they definitely had it together at one point, but it looks like they lost it come bracket time.
Yeah, I wonder if the humidity got to them, or fatigue, or just
which that would be pretty ironic,
right? Well, I mean, they always, we always say it's a dry heat, so that's
fair enough.
actually, yeah, that's multiple levels of irony. Yeah, that's just went right over my head. 'Cause they're called heat, duh.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess that's time to move on to co-ed then, if that's how my brain's going. So co-ed, well, congrats on taking first. Kind of want to ask the same thing just to kind of get the juices flowing with this one. How did this differ from round one, aside from you guys taking it?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the other stuff looked the same. Arsenal made it to the final of the winner bracket, which was, I mean, they did really well in open at round one and did really well in co-ed at round two. But if my memory serves, they did terrible at co-ed in round one. And so it's kind of a flip-flop here because their round two open showing was less than they were hoping for. Heat made it pretty far in this one. They got to top 4 in the winners, which would put them somewhere around 6th or 7th. Fortune was not the team they were in round one. Not missing any players, they ran into Doom pretty early in the losers bracket, so that was a no bueno. It looks like Doom dropped their first game. Their second game. So they got gridlock first, and then they came up against us in each of our second game, and we knocked them down 2-1 in a great match. I guess the theme of this one was that throughout the bracket, huge catches by our ladies, and especially Tiffany, they really picked us up. I remember specifically a play in that Doom game where it was Ish and Cole and one of their ladies. Maybe 2 of their ladies, Ish, Cole, and both the ladies, and it's our 2 ladies. Britt was in that game, and Tiffany, and it was right after Britt had hit Vince out on a solo.
Wow!
When he was pushing the line, she tagged him in the foot, and then for some reason, Ish and Cole don't double team. They kind of misdirect, and Cole throws at Britt. Britt throws at the same time, so they trade, and then Cole throws straight at Tiff, and she catches him. She jumps and catches it, which brings me back in the game. So it's me and Tiff against the 2 ladies, and that closes it out. So there was a couple of that was actually the second game, I want to say. So I think maybe it was the first. So it ended up 2-1, but that was not the closeout game. There was one after that. Or 2 after that. That must have been the first game. Yeah, because the third game we were on that same side, and I charged down Cole and took him out, and then Nate was final against 3 of us. I threw a catch and a group throw, which was on purpose because their next player in was, I think her name is Sarah. The point was just to throw the balls at Nate, make sure we hit him. He caught one, which is fine, because then it's our 2 of our other guys against their girl who just came in. And Tiff, as she walks in, she literally puts 2 feet on the court, and Tiff hits her before she can even look up.
Oh, dang.
It was amazing. It was probably the best play I saw. Like, as far as maybe not the most impressive skill play, but the funniest play. As soon as she steps on the court, she's out as the final player, which is a brutal way to go. Just a brutal way to, it wasn't the end of the tournament. That'd make it more brutal, but it pushed them down. And then Doom ended up beating Echo, which we were all thankful for, before losing to Fury. Yep. Force, as I mentioned earlier, had both of the out-of-state big names, Sean and Colin, and that propelled them to the top 4 in the winners bracket, and then getting knocked out by Rise, so they finished 4th. So a pretty good showing for them. I think they finished 3rd at round 1, so about the same spot. I'm trying to think of who they were missing. They were missing Israel, and they were missing Ronk. That's a big one we haven't brought up yet. Ronk was absent.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So both Havoc and Force were missing Ronk.
Gotcha.
What are some other differences?
I kind of want to talk about Echo, because I was surprised that they got knocked out so early, and then I saw that somebody sent Doom really early, you guys again, and it looks like that took them out. And I wonder if maybe missing Brett Baxter was a difference there.
Yeah, he was injured. He refed a lot of games. I've already sent him a thank you for that. I always appreciate it. Him and Joe Colella refed a lot of the games down the stretch, which is a big deal to have. When you're not in, or especially Brett in this case, where he wasn't even really on team. He was just there to cheer. Maybe he'd already everything bought when he got hurt. But either way, just appreciate being there to ref those games so that players who are involved or players who don't have as much experience reffing as those two don't have to step into a big game. I can't say we didn't play Echo during the day. I saw the end of the Echo Doom match, and it came down to Pyan against a whole bunch of people on Doom. And Vince actually did an interesting move. They had a lot of balls. I think Vince was holding 2, and then they had 4. So Vince chucks the first one probably 10 feet over Pyan's head, I think just to get him to make his move. Pyan drops down, and then as he's down now, they throw again immediately and just lit him up. So that's an interesting one, to throw a ball to get someone to make their move. Normally you'd use a fake for that, but it worked in this case, and Pyan was last in, and they hit him out, and he didn't get a catch. So Echo's had a disappointing year so far, but I'm sure at any point they'll probably figure it out.
Yeah, that I was going to kind of comment on Vince. It's like a good probing type of shot. Like if you have the balls, you might as well physically actually test one. I wonder if that's ever been, I don't want to say done before, but I'm going to look out for that more now. That's pretty cool.
Anyone's ever, maybe realized that that's what's happening. Yeah. Anything you can do to get that person in a final player situation to make their move is really, that's the goal. You don't want their first move to be something you can't predict.
Exactly.
So you get them, a lot of times you get someone to jump, and the next time they dive on the ground, and it's pretty clear what's going on. So if you can get that first move out of the way, the second move is usually not nearly as good.
Yeah, especially if they plant and commit to that catch and drop on their knees, and then you already have 3 of your teammates ready to throw as soon as that move's been made. You already know what that person's doing. That's pretty clever. Let's see who else I want to ask about.
One other team I'd mention, because I think actually it was I would say it's probably our toughest round of the bracket. The Doom match was pretty close, but the toughest match that we played was against Saucy, which was at top 8 of the winners bracket. And unfortunately, I don't think anyone got this match on film because it got delayed. But man, it was that was a close match. And shout out to them. I mean, lots of great players on that team. They made a change. That mentioned earlier, Daniel from Tutha. He was playing on Nope in round 1, and this round he got moved to Saucy. So good for him. And interesting. They put a huge fight in. They ended up going out to Rise in the very next. They dropped down and beat they dropped down and beat Alliance, and then went out to Rise. Ended up getting second. So consolation points, but again, theme of the day is you don't get anything for that.
Yep. I remember what team I want to ask about. Heat. It looks like they did a little bit better in co-ed. Can you?
They did. I was actually hoping to play them because we've never played them. I think there would have been some, you didn't beat Rise. If Rise didn't make it there and us beat them. But I was hoping to play Heat because we don't really ever get a chance to play them. I think it would have made for a pretty interesting final to shake it up from the Rise Reignbros, which hopefully is the Reignbros is half of that staple. We'll see. But I didn't watch much of the Rise game. Unfortunately, when I'm not playing, usually I'm not watching. I'm kind of trying to stay warm. And there was a pretty long break for us. We had to sit through the Heat and the Rise match, the Rise and the Force match, and the Arsenal and the Rise match. I felt like that all happened after we beat Arsenal. So it kind of felt like a long time.
Gotcha. Let's see who else. Shade. How did they do?
I did not see Shade. We still have not played Shade yet either. It looks like they lost to Rise, as did many others, but they knocked Riot out. So it's a good showing for them. I don't know much about that team. I know some of the players on it, but yeah, that's I couldn't tell you much on their other than their finish, which not terrible.
Yeah, they're a fun
Top
team.
10.
Love their Facebook posts and their fans. It's pretty hilarious.
Yeah, that's something this year that's been, I think, is also people have said the jerseys have taken a step up, but also the kind of the social media presence, I'd say, has taken a step up. Really, the North kind of started that. I think if you've been involved in the kind of rivalry between like Dynasty and the Gamecocks. So
Yeah,
I hope to see more of that. I like that the teams will have a social media presence and can have kind of a theme or a marketing campaign, so to speak, going on with their team online. I think that's pretty cool.
oh yeah, making it fun. We used to do stuff like that for when I ran Tucson Dodgeball way back in the day, and we would have like team captains making fun of each other, calling them out on YouTube, and it was a blast. But it'd be cool to see something like that, but a little more professional with Elite, especially with as you said, more of a social media presence and getting those likes and getting that virality going. Hopefully, I mean, it's really cool to see like a clip and see how many views it's had, how many shares it's had. My favorite so far, almost now of all time, was that Brody catch with the aliens that I think big.
Yeah, the X-Files.
Yeah, I mean, the more stuff like that gets out there, I mean, I think the more likely we'll see more people picking up on dodgeball and seeing, wow, these teams look good, they're polished. You have teams like Rise changing their names to San Diego Rise now. You have Mark cracking down on goofy names. Yeah, I'm all for that kind of change.
Yeah, I saw the Rise change. That's an interesting one. We don't have a city name. I wonder that conversation hasn't come up yet. I wonder if they'll do anything like that. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know that we could take Portland. Maybe the Oregon Reignbros, or I don't know what sounds good.
Yeah, I was wondering how that would happen, especially when you have several teams of LA. Is it going to break down to like the smaller cities like Torrance or or even Phoenix? Are you going to see like the Arizona Heat or the Phoenix Heat or the Tempe Titans, or how's that going to work? But I like it. I think that's another good step in the direction that we all want to see dodgeball take part in. I did want to ask though. Well, first of all, actually, Serge scared me when he said after consideration. I thought Rise was throwing the towel in. I was like, no, this better not be what I think it is. I was just remembering that. I wonder if anybody else got that feeling.
Michael did, Koiv, from my team for sure. Yeah, I think he even commented on there. And you know what? Actually, that's something interesting we saw this tournament was that team looked a little older. I hope I don't. I mean, I'm sure I will catch a little flack for saying this, but down the stretch, they, maybe it was because they had to play a couple extra games, or maybe it was the heat of the gym or the travel. But you could tell at least one of them was cramping. I think Tim was wearing like one of those bands you wear on your wrist to put pressure on your muscles so your hands don't cramp.
Oh wow!
Looked like he was wearing one of those. Tyler threw a catch to Tiffany in the only game he played in the final, and it looked like it had 0 miles per hour on it. So maybe they looked like they had hit a little bit of a wall by the time they got to us in the final, which is something we've experienced before, but I've never noticed it from them. So that was an interesting thing.
Yeah, I wonder, if the locations were different. If you had faced off in LA or San Diego, if the cramping and the fatigue and all that stuff would have been a factor. But it comes with the territory. We want to be competitive. We want to travel to other regions. We got to figure out a way to adapt and condition. And maybe it's a good wake up call for people thinking, wow, I don't know what the weather is like in Minnesota, but if we're all going to travel over to a completely new region, might need to take that into consideration. Might need to actually start doing, I don't say like high altitude training, but just this isn't LA anymore. Like LA and Vegas
Right.
aren't the places that the competition is going to be. It could be anywhere now.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's good for the sport, and if it helps maybe give some teams that are forced to travel more an edge here and there, then that's not bad. That's not a bad thing. I I definitely set for myself a specific like week up to regimen. I drank a liter of water every day and 2 liters the day before, and I'm not always so good about that. So that could have been part of what paid off for me, and now I have to challenge myself to continue that kind of thing going forward before tournaments.
Well, it's on record now, so I'll be shooting you a message a couple days prior, like, hey, you hydrating? Because it's funny, we do that before, drill when we're about to do like a huge ruck march or something crazy. Like we're making sure we're all hydrating, and it's like you said, you're supposed to drink like a liter or 2 liters a day prior to stop from dying on the side of the road. But that might actually be a really good practice now that people are experiencing cramping, and as you said, we're getting older, so we got to take better care of ourselves.
And more different gyms you're playing in, and who knows what the conditions are. Like San Diego, I'll have to definitely take that into account.
Exactly.
But it felt good to get the win. Reignbros has 5 second-place finishes in our history. We finished second in Open and Co-ed at round 2 of 2016. We finished second place at 2 rounds for Co-ed last year, round 1 and 2, and then third place in Open round 1, and then we finished third place at Nationals in Co-ed, and then we finished second place at round 1 in Co-ed of this year. So, I mean, we've knocked on that door. Round 1 of last year, we even won the winner's bracket, and then lost 4 straight to Echo. So this was kind of that. We'd been knocking on the door. We'd even kind of opened it halfway and peeked inside, but we busted through it this time. So
straight kicked it down from the looks of it.
Yeah.
So aside from this being, in your home turf, aside from maybe being acclimated to the weather, what else did you guys do differently to make this happen? Did you owe Britt a championship from when you decided to play in Joust for the Seattle Classic, or what was different?
No kidding. I mean, she was big. Kate had injured her ankle at the LA Classic playing with Lovetap a couple weeks, about a month. I think it was about a month ago when that happened, when that tournament took place.
Right.
And it just being in our hometown, it made no sense to avoid just covering that possibility, right? If someone has to pay for travel, that's kind of a different story. Then you maybe just kind of eat it. But Britt was going to be there anyway. She's on that level, so it made no sense not to ask her and just say, hey, we may need someone. I can't guarantee you playing time. You may just be shagging the entire time, but it's going to give you the experience of being around a top level team, even if you don't play, and being in that environment and being in the huddle and being a part of the game plan. So, come take it. She ended up playing quite a lot. Kate sat a lot during round robin. She sat a couple games here and there in the bracket, including, the game against Doom I mentioned where Britt recorded a key out. Actually, 2 key outs was part of the reason we won that match in that game. So she performed well and earned every bit of that championship that I owed her, apparently. We definitely played better in co-ed than we did in open. I think we kind of have like a weird mental block around open because none of us have experience with it. Like our first experience playing an open game regularly was when we started in elite, not having that balance of players who maybe take a back seat or don't need to be involved in every throw. Not to crap on the guys or to say something different about the girls, but they tend to take a different approach to the game. Guys always push to be up in front or involved, and it's a different dynamic when you have a team of 6 guys and 2 or 3 of them need to not be in that throw and they need to give their ball to another guy. And it's something that a lot of guys have trouble with. And maybe it's just not even something that you run across as a piece of drama for the team. Just everyone doesn't even think about it. But in the co-ed game, it's much more clear. I give my ball to Sean, Tiff hands her ball to me. Like it's clear. Tiff can throw the ball. We know we can, and when we're in a position she's part of the throw, we're happy to have her there, and she can perform there better than any girl in 8.5 in all of our opinions. But it's different when you have to deal with 6 egos. And And I think guys are definitely more ego-filled players on average or in general. So I think we as a team play better in co-ed because of that. Not just because our girls are the best girls that are available, but also not just available, the best girls that are playing, but also because our roles on the team are better defined. In open, I think what I've learned from this is that our roles in open need to be more defined. We need to lock it up more. We need to make sure that if someone's not fulfilling their requirement, that we say it and then we discuss it and then we get it out of the way and we make sure it gets fixed. And we also slow the game down. We played rise ball. I mean, there would be almost no difference other than that our girls were involved if you looked between the two teams and the way we played. And that's a tough thing. I'm a big fan of running up and countering after someone throws, and it just doesn't make sense to do that all the time. And I need to do a better job of picking that, especially in open. So that's I think something that we can take away and that we learned and even put to more good use, something we've kind of always known in open, but we can now hopefully transition it always done in co-ed, but hopefully we can transfer it to open.
Gotcha. So there's lessons learned that you can apply for both divisions, or at least transfer from one to the other to see how you can kick down that door for open instead of just knocking on it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I especially learned the difference just in examining my play between the two and just the way I play differently. And I think I've always played differently in co-ed. I think I've always kind of taken a more team approach in co-ed and for some reason less in open. And I've looked at open as more of like a high performance, faster paced game, and it doesn't have to be that. So I think I learned it as it was happening, but I didn't learn it until co-ed. And while we were playing, I know, and now watching the film, it's just solidified it. So I think we've taken something away from a win in co-ed that can be added to open, but we'll see. The time will tell.
Right, we'll see in July, maybe.
One other thing that was really, I think, was cool, we mentioned a lot of the differences of it being in the Northwest, but we also got to see a bunch of players get their first crack at elite. And bringing in their local teams down. Seattle was the biggest example of this. There was unfortunately no Portland teams that were new. There was one or two Portland players who might not normally play that showed up and played. But we had Fembots, which is the team of Seattle ladies that made the trip, and did well for themselves. I think they probably hit about what their expectations were. In co-ed, we had the Land Sharks, which is a team Vince and Wynn put together, and Greg, our guy on open, played with them in co-ed. Sorry you didn't get a championship, Greg. And then Grunge was another team of Seattle folks that made the trip down, started competing this year locally in our kind of cross-pollinated tournaments, but got a chance at elite, which is, I mean, it can only be good for those players, to see that there is somewhere to go. If you want to keep playing dodgeball, there's somewhere to go. Like, there's a top level that you aren't going to crack anytime soon of being the best at. There's always room for the more improvement.
Right. That was one of the things I want to ask too, was there any new teams that came from your region, and were they there for round one? Roybots or Roybits?
Roybits, yeah, Roybits. Roybots was there. Yes, they were not an open team in round one. They were an open team, but they played with two of their ladies. They basically played with the same team in open and co-ed. They played with full 6 guys in this tournament, and added Michael Lyons, who I don't believe was at round one, and is a very talented player who can make a lot of noise. And we played them very early on. They may have even been our like third match or something like that. And we took them down pretty easily. It looks like they went out to Arsenal in there. So they went 2 and done. They lost their first and then lost right away. So they lost to Showtime and then lost to Arsenal. But going down to Arsenal is, even though they lost the match right after that to Downpour, isn't something to be too sad about. It's a solid team.
Right.
But they got a chance, and they got a chance to compete in their co-ed team as well, and their ladies got a chance to compete in the women's division, which I think is great. And other women from Seattle got a chance at that. The Northwest, we don't really have women's. Like I said, we don't really have open. So those players getting a chance to compete like that is good for them.
Is Retro a new team?
No, Retro Cali was at round 1.
Okay.
It's David Tate's. I think Tad was on that team at round 1, and Jake Laster, who was not at round 2.
Got it.
Then a few other people. I think Davey's girlfriend, Rochelle or Rachel, she was on that team at round 1, but I don't recall seeing her at round 2. But they were there at round 1.
Gotcha. Okay, that's just my poor memory there. I will say though, 28 co-ed teams. That's a lot to remember.
Yeah, no kidding. That bracket took a long time. Just to count out, just to tell you the teams that we played on our run there, which I think is pretty crazy. We had to play Land Sharks, which I mentioned was the Seattle team with one of the Reignbros on it, so we took them down early. Then we had to play Doom, Saucy, Force, Arsenal, and Rise.
Yes.
So Saucy, might be the unsung team of that group. I think I mentioned them already. They just a great team, nowhere to go but up for them. And Doom right before them, Force right after them, which was third at the last round. We played them twice at round 1 and took them out both times. We took them out 2-0 this time. Arsenal, we 2-0'd. They had a very interesting side of the bracket. They went through Echo, they went through Havoc, and they went through Heat. So just, this no slouch, this 28 team tournament, once you get down to it, there's probably 12 or 14 teams that have a chance.
Yeah, it's not like dare I say, it's not like open where there's like maybe 5 that have a real solid chance at taking first. It's like you said, there's like 14 teams here that it could be anybody's day. I think I lost you though. Oh, you're there. Cool.
I think you're exactly right that it could be anyone's day, and I think that's what's great. The co-ed division doesn't necessarily get the same maybe publicity. People don't necessarily take it as seriously, but I think it's a way better tournament than open because of just the amount of teams that have a chance. You would say Echo was the national champion 2 years ago, and here they are finishing outside of top 8, and the last tournament they were like 5th or 6th. So that's saying a lot even of itself. They really have had no roster changes, and other teams have just stepped their games up. So that's that. I think I've heard some grumblings that a co-ed may go to 3-3, and that it may actually change to no sting in the West. And I think that would be a mistake given the competitiveness and the what's the word, just how evenly matched all these teams are at the top of co-ed. I think it would be a mistake to make a change to that.
Yeah, I was groaning, not so much for 3-on-3. I think that wouldn't be nearly as catastrophic as just losing yet another 8.5 division. That would hurt a lot personally.
Yeah, to me it's elite, right? I don't. To me, no sting doesn't feel elite. Maybe I'm an elitist.
Right. I got that pun.
Yeah, I bad puns all day. I'll keep at it. But it feels like 8.5 is elite. It's what we do the open division in. We have co-ed no sting in the regions like in the South where 8.5 was unheard of before elite got there. And in the East, they do their co-ed no sting, and it's fine. We do it at nationals. But in the West, we have the best 8.5 playing women in the country. They should have the chance to still play it after it got taken out of women's. I think we'd be doing a disservice to dodgeball if we took that away.
Yeah, I'm with you. No sting is obviously very competitive, but for me, the way I see it 8.5 is the the apex of competitive dodgeball, and going to no sting is kind of like, I don't want to say a step down because that might offend some people, but I definitely feel like it doesn't have the same intensity and strategy and competitiveness that 8.5 has. And again, that could just be from years of playing 8.5. If I had started on foam, I'd probably be saying the exact same thing for foam, but
I don't know. I don't know if you would. I definitely think we could both admit that our biases are 8.5, but I think that we also have fairly strong arguments for why 8.5 is the most balanced game in its current form, that throwing and catching are both pretty equally big, and I think we'd both be right if we said that No Sting was definitely a thrower's game.
yeah, absolutely. Plus, I mean, show me a curveball from 8.5, impressive. Show me no sting, meh. It's not as
yeah,
as
if
cool.
you can't throw a curveball and no sting, what are you doing?
Yeah. I don't want to be too mean, but yeah, I agree. Like, what are you doing? I think we're good on co-ed. I did want to ask though if any other players that you might have noticed stood out, kind of like the open question, but that we might have missed before we go into showdown real quick.
Sure, yeah, I would say Reeve was. I mean, Reeve was amazing. Reeve had, in our first game against Force, Reeve Moore, M-O-I-R, he's our other rookie to Reignbros. He plays on both open and co-ed, unlike Greg, who just plays on co-ed. In our first game against Force, I threw a catch in the opening throw against Brittany Mastro, and then pretty quick after that, I want to say it was Michael Coive threw a catch to Glenn. And then Reeve on his own made two catches, one on Colin and one on Colin O'Brien, and one on Sean Wheeler, to bring us back into the game, and just pulled it. He was the only player in the game. Him and Kate might have been the only two who stayed in the game the whole time. But I feel like at one point he was final. So, I mean, from start to finish, he's the only player who was in the game the whole time. Clutch plays throughout. Smart play, controlled play. Didn't put himself out of position. Went for the catch when you needed him to every time. Stayed alive when he was thrown at in a position he shouldn't try to catch. And that was not the only match he was the hero of. He was big. Let's see here. Let's look at some of the other teams. I don't think Arsenal. I think Arsenal is a team that really relies on their players to have big games. I don't know that they necessarily are at the talent level that they just can carry it every time, and all of them as a team get there. I think it relies on really big performances. So I would say that on the backs of Maddox and Jarrell, they put in work to get them to the winners final. So that's an impressive performance right there. Saucy bringing in Daniel and their other guy Xander. When we played them, those two were scary. I'm pretty sure I caught Daniel Ariano in that match, which was a big turning point. But Xander hit me out. He would just throw a ball, and I couldn't quite get the block up in time. He'd hit my hand. Whenever you get hit like on the hand or like on the finger, kind of like in the ring between your pointer finger and your thumb, those are the worst. I think what happened is I was like coming up to block, and we were about to throw, and I had to like start the count to throw because I was the counter, but I also had to dump my ball and walk out of bounds. So that was a really really frustrating moment. I remember pretty clearly, even though we don't have it on film. I had to step out of bounds while counting still. So shout out to them again. They put up a huge fight. Vince tried on his own to carry us over Doom. I don't think any of them played specifically well in that match except him. He had two catches. He caught Reeve and he caught Sean in the same game that they ended up losing because that was the game that he then got hit out right after, and they threw the catch to Tiff. So he did everything he could. It's really frustrating for your team to lose two games when you also make two catches, I bet. So shout out to him. He played well. I'm sure everyone expected that, but he still deserves a shout out.
Just out of curiosity, did he look like he was slowed down at all? Like the heat and the cramping was affecting him?
No, Vince looked fine. I didn't notice any problems with Vince. But they won open, so he had to play more games there, and then they didn't go too far in co-ed. They lost to Fury, so
it's the vegan powers of the vegetarian. It's got to be.
He takes good. My understanding of Vince is that he takes really good care of himself. Not only is a vegan, but he takes really good care of himself. So I'm not surprised that he's 100%.
Just well conditioned.
Let's see. I'm looking through some of the other teams here.
You know what? I wanted to ask. Was Ashley Tyree there?
Yeah, she was. She played on Downpour.
How did she do?
I didn't see. We didn't play Downpour. Normally, we play them at every tournament. We played them twice, I think, in Open. Once in the bracket and once in round robin at round 1. But we didn't play them at all here, and in co-ed either. They had a great seed in co-ed. What I heard about that was that the grouping that they were in was not very good, but it had Echo in it, so you had at least one other top team. But they came out with a really high seed after co-ed. Let's see here. They were the 2 seed. So they must have been doing something right.
I would say so.
But I couldn't tell you specifically how she played.
Yeah, I'm curious to see like how she adapts. So I've seen her play since like 2006-7, and she was just a catching fiend. I've seen her catch like one-handed double like on purpose. Like, people will catch like they'll do a double catch and it'll be because they bear hugged 2 balls at the right time.
Sure, yeah.
I've seen her do left and right. One of them against Mason Shank. I don't know if you probably don't know who that guy is, but a monster here in Arizona, or a former monster. He was like the catch him before catch him is what we were kind of starting to equate him as. And so she was just great all around. I'm curious to see like if she's able to adapt to the elite style and get back up to, or get past to where she was. So I'll be watching her more. And I'm assuming Kevin Pack didn't show up for this.
He did not. He was originally actually supposed to be on our team for this tournament. I mean, we couldn't get him. We couldn't convince him to travel to all the LA and San Diego or nationals, but he was committed to playing with us in Portland. And a couple months ago, he told us he had to back out. So no, unfortunately not. I was hoping to also see Stephen Britton at this tournament, but he did not make an appearance either. So I think just some of those guys that maybe kind of their lives have moved them past dodgeball.
Maybe for the case of Steven, I mean, I've always seen him do like Spartan races, and curious as always to see how he would have done. He was a phenomenal catcher. I'm glad James is still playing. I'm assuming James Alston was there,
yes,
right?
He's on Downpour.
Yeah, good to see him. Always good to see Brandon. But yeah, just always gonna hold a candle for that one day Kevin Pack shows up, and I just want him to see what it's like.
I actually think Stephen Britton is. I think he. I mean, if he were playing, he would be one of the top 3 or 4 Northwest players. I think he's much better. At least the last time I saw Pack play, and how I remember him playing, I've always considered Stephen Britton to be a better all-around player. I don't know, maybe he didn't have the arm that I think he does now when you last saw him play, but he can throw, he can catch, he can play anywhere on the court. His catching just up court, his catching in the middle was amazing. He used to play here in our leagues, and I even got the chance to play on a team with him for a couple seasons, and just he didn't always care necessarily about ball control or things like that, but I think that's because he was playing in a rec league and it wasn't that big a deal to him. But against the top competition, even he could consistently show that he was the best player or one of the best players, not only on the court but playing the game in the area. So it's a bummer for me. I think I would say I'm even more bummed not to see him playing than Kevin Pack, because I hold him in very high regard.
That's fair. And then for me and some of the older guys like Chad, we've just seen, we're used to seeing Kevin play, and we wanted to adapt. Get humbled by elite and then get better, because I imagine that's how it would go. He definitely has an arm on him, but as elite has proven time and again, you can't just roll in here with just an arm and excel. You have to bring it all. So it would be really cool to see one day Kevin show up, play, go back, get better, and then really start murdering people like the good old NDL days when he used to do that. I think that's all I had as far as co-ed. Definitely want to get into Showdown real quick, and I saw that that you're still in it, so that's awesome. And you said that before we started recording, there was the potential for Northwest to be the entire, that's all it was left.
Yeah, the Northwest could have been the entire top 4, and actually it was most of the top 8. So the top 8 was so we played 2 rounds here, so there was 16 and then 8. So I won't go back as far as 16 individually. I can tell you that I had to beat Mick in top 16, and then I had to play Corey Arondeles in 8, and I knocked them both out. But at top 8, it was Sean Anderson, Reignbros, Dan Robertson, who's on Wild Cards, Corey Arondeles from Arsenal, me from Reignbros, Ryan Haley from LA Riot, Michael Coive from Reignbros, Roy McElmurray from Roybots, and Drew Jones from Lovetap. So let's see, Drew, Roy, Coive, me, Sean. So that's 5 of those 8 were Northwest. And before that, Coive beat my dad, who was also top 16. So that matchup would have been a Northwest, pretty highly likely. So, and actually, I think my dad beat him. I want to see the film of that. But they called one of the hits. They called simultaneous, and then in the replay, they called that Coive hit my dad first. And I think it was the other way around. I think my dad won that match. So potentially, my dad could have been top 8 if he had beaten Ryan Haley in his in the same place that Coive did. So that'd have been a pretty interesting match. So
man, how cool would that have been to have to battle against your dad for Showdown? Yeah,
so he would have had to go against Drew Jones had he beaten Ryan Haley, and so if he'd have beaten Drew and I beat Dan Robertson, who's my top 4, my semifinal matchup, to be the one from the West to have a father-son in that, man, that would have been that would have been something. That
would have been fun to build hype around. I would have savored every second of that just for the drama.
So either way, if I win my matchup, I've got to play someone from the Northwest. So I mean, we've got a pretty high chance of the one from the West being a Northwest player. So that's
crazy.
I mean, that'll be pretty cool in our first full year of bringing multiple teams to every round. Here we are, which is what you have to do to play in the Showdown, because you can't make it to the Showdown all the way through without being at every round. So most, for Drew and for, I think my dad's been at all the rounds, but for Drew and Roy, players who made the top 8 and Drew's in the top 4, this was their first opportunity to do that. So good for them.
Very cool. So this will continue in San Diego?
Yes. So we'll play the last 2 rounds for the West. So I'll play Dan Robertson. Michael Coive will play Drew Jones, and then the winner of each of those matches will play, and then the one will be determined from that to play in the top 4 from the country at Minnesota Nationals.
Nice. Now, so you played Showdown last year and the year prior?
The year prior, I did not. The year prior, we were only at the Palm Springs round, and so I couldn't join it. That was round 2 because it had already started. But yet last year I played it, and I made it to top 4 and lost to Vince, who ended up winning. Vince went out to Ryan Haley in the first round of this year, and Ryan Haley's out now. So, that was the barrier I ran into last year, not in front of me this year. So I'm liking my chances. But Dan is a scary player. He took out Sean pretty quick, and I think I have a better skill set for this than Sean. But it was interesting to watch them go at it and how easily Dan handled him. So I'll have my work cut out for me.
Gotcha. That'll be fun to watch in San Diego, which I will actually be at.
No surprise weddings this time, huh?
Yeah, unless it's my own, which not a chance. I'll definitely be there for San Diego. And I was going to ask if this was your best showing for Showdown so far, but I'll probably ask that in San Diego. Yeah, it looks like you're tied from last year. I don't want to say I'm surprised to see Michael Coive on there, but I've been seeing a lot of him, and I vaguely recall him from my days in the PNW, but pretty cool that he's popping up more and more, and I wonder if that has to do with just that's just the strength you guys are bringing to the plate or to the table, so to speak.
I've kind of had this discussion with a few other people, specifically in the question of has any other team just kind of jumped on the scene and had the immediate impact that we've had. And I mean, even you can see, even if you take Fortune into account, the answer is no. Like, no other team has kind of jumped on the scene and immediately made a splash. You know, in our first, I guess you would say, kind of our first 2 full years, you know, we have several second place finishes. Now we have a win. We've got a couple third place finishes, including one at nationals. So no team has really ever come in and made the kind of splash that we make. And the reason is because when we formed, we had more or less first pick of the talent pool in a pretty big market.
Right.
Most teams forming now. So I think I was talking to, it was Connor Heelan from EXO. I was talking to him about this. You know, they're forming a new team. EXO's a new team this year, but they don't. There's already 10, 15, 12 teams from LA to take the talent. You know, the people who are willing to go and the best talent available. So they're pulling from, you know, the newer players that are coming into play that, you know, have talent, have potential. But we were pulling from basically the Doom, the Northwest Doom equivalent is what we formed. So it's no surprise that we were able to have success, and it's also no surprise that most new teams that come in don't get that opportunity and don't start out where we did.
That's a really good point. Hopefully I'm not the only one that's guilty of this, but I've admitted this before. When I think of Seattle and Portland, Reignbros, I feel like you guys are all from the same city and not 5 hours apart, and you have like this huge talent base of people to choose from. And so, you know, going back to when you and I were talking for the interview, it's like, man, it's Doom and Rise and maybe Titan, maybe us at the time, and it would take a miracle to come out of left field to dethrone one of them so we can even have a chance to get to, you know, the first place seed, and then boom, here come you guys. I don't want to say a bunch of nobodies, but really a bunch of unknowns. But you just come
we were
in.
Nobodies. That's the right way to say it. And no one down there knew who anyone but maybe Lucas was at that time. Like Lucas maybe knew a couple people, but you guys had quit playing NDL before Sean and Ricky made their only appearance there. I had never been outside of the Northwest to play, so we were nobodies. I mean, that's the right way to say it. No one knew who we were. We never made our, so to speak, our mark on the dodgeball map outside of the area that we lived in. So, it takes a lot of things aligning properly, because even another market that may have the amount of players ready to come join at the quality, none of them play 8.5. Like, there's no untapped market like that left. That we know of. You know, I don't know, maybe people didn't know of Northwest very much. Maybe there's something like that in Iowa, or I don't know,
some state,
Hawaii. Who knows? Like, maybe Alaska has that and we just don't know about it. But so I mean, there's who can predict if there's any other place like that where they've been playing 8.5 for 15 years and they have a pool of players that have played and grown in the game and committed to it enough that if they put their all-star team together, they can make an impact on the best players in the country. So
that's the best teams. It's an interesting thought, or interesting point, and a fun thought to think about. And it's funny you said Hawaii. That was actually the case for the NDL during 2009 through 11. Mixed plate crew was probably exactly that. I mean, it's a small state, little collection of islands where they're probably getting the best players, and they were awesome. They're very scrappy, very, very good players, and you're like, how did this team come out of nowhere and just start defeating everybody? But who knows? Maybe there's some untapped potential out there somewhere, and you know, hopefully Elite can grab it and we can just bring more people into the fold, as I like to say, and we'll just get better and better because of it. But I think that's all I had for both open and co-ed. Did you have anything else that you wanted to kind of highlight or points to talk to?
Well, this was outside of the tournament, I mentioned the party a little bit. This was a really fun tournament for me, in that I got to kind of be a part of my hometown a little bit, you know. So The party was at a local bar that I've been to before. I got to show a couple people who are willing to go out, good times at a couple of our what they call barcades. So on Thursday night, we all went out. There was probably about 20 of us. A couple of us Reignbros and a bunch of people. Pine was there, and Brendan Bulliard, and Tori and James from Showtime, and Casey Reed from Lovetap, and Christina. A bunch of them came out to Ground Control, which is a barcade we have downtown. They have a bunch of classic arcade games and pinball machines and stuff. So we got to go out and party there and play games until like 1 a.m. And then Sunday we went out again to Quarter World, which is another big barcade. We have tons of pinball machines, and I got to hang out with James and Nick and Tori again, and Alicia came out for a minute, and Cara Package came out, and so we got to have a blast kind of in our hometown and show those people here when we want to go have a good time in Portland, like this is what we go do. So I thought that was really fun, and I think it's something that more areas could maybe do, is provide, maybe not everyone's schedule suits it, but provide something like that night before the tournament, and the night, or the day after the tournament. Give those people who are local a chance to hang out and show them maybe something that you like to do in your town. So hopefully that carries on, but I was happy to be a part of that here in Portland.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we're gonna travel to LA in July. Big whoop. Same thing with San Diego. Been there, done that. But like, it was really cool seeing a bunch of people, especially us Arizonans, going to Portland and commenting on the beauty and the green, and just enjoying an opportunity to explore a new region. And it was really cool, and I was very jealous of seeing some of the barcade shots, and just thinking, dang it, that wedding really took a lot. But yeah, it's cool seeing that, and I wonder if that's going to be the case for Minnesota for nationals. I felt like it was the case for New Orleans in 2016 when I went to the nationals for that. So it's always cool seeing like the, what do you call it? Not the melding pot, but like just the merging of regions and other people seeing new sites, and it just adds a whole nother element to the awesomeness that is the dodgeball community that we all know.
Yeah, I think I guess I would issue a challenge, and not to say that you have to do anything, but maybe it's something you could do if you're the hometown team, or a couple people take it on themselves to just throw an event while people are there. It doesn't have to be something you make everyone come to. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but a couple nights before or the day after, anyone who's still in town, just put it out there and say, hey, this is something I love to do while I'm in town. This is a bar that I love, or this is a restaurant that I love. Let's meet at this time, and just set it up there. Not everyone's going to make it, but just set it up there and give people a chance to see something that's part of your hometown. So that would be something I think that would really help the morale of the community and everyone get to know each other better. And to speak to what you said about trees, that was, I think, the funniest thing I heard Tori say when you got to Ground Control on Thursday night. It was like 10 or something, I think, when we all met up there. And he's like, oh my gosh, I was driving along the freeway and there are trees. Yeah, there are trees here. How are there trees in this place? And I said, yeah, it's a really big step up over the barbed wire that you have wrapped around your freeway signs in LA, isn't it?
Yeah. I made a comment to a friend of mine. I was like, oh, all my dodgeball friends are posting about how great Oregon is and how their trees have like leaves and like it's green, and it's just not what we're used to. I mean, we have trees here, but it's all, dried up stuff, and they want to kill you. And then you've got cacti and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's a good challenge. And hopefully, Serge, Ferrari, you're listening. Now that you're the San Diego Rise, just saying. Just going to leave it at that. So, nudge.
Nudge. Agreed, nudge.
Cool, man. Well, I definitely appreciate you hopping on and kind of recapping. And I think between you and Tim Wells now, you guys are tied for the most appearances on the podcast so far. But I thought that, not only just since you guys won co-ed, but also because this had to do with Portland, it just made sense to reach out to you first. And we'll see if I can get the women's division. But as far as open and co-ed goes, again, tall order. But definitely appreciate you stepping up and being willing to recap. And congrats. And yeah, I'll for sure see you in San Diego.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, thank you again for having me on. Always a pleasure, and really enjoy doing stuff like this. So look forward to seeing you then.
Sounds good. Alrighty, so I do want to warn anybody that the audio for this next piece may not be the best. Unfortunately, I was not able to connect with Crystal in a close-off setting. I caught her when she was driving. So for any of you guys with, I guess, sensitive ears, I do apologize. I did, however, not want to not cover the women's in any aspect, the women's division. So did just want to kind of give a fair warning before we begin. So on that note, we'll just go right into the interview with Crystal Briones. Alrighty, so here to help me recap the women's division, because I definitely A, did not want to miss that, and B, I didn't think Allyn would be capable of doing so, is Crystal Briones. Crystal, thank you so much for joining me. I do want to just kind of apologize in advance because you're in your car, so if anybody's wondering what's going on with the audio, that's just the only way we can connect. So first off, thank you for joining, and I'll just get right into it. What was the main difference that you noticed between round 1 and round 2? Just to kind of jog your memory a little bit.
The main difference from round 1 and round 2, besides round 2 being in Portland, Oregon, which was my first time there, beautiful, beautiful city. And then going into the venue, I thought the venue was not bad up until the tournament kept going, and you could just tell that there was no ventilation in that building as far as like the nets and spaces. I know at CSUN, one of the issues from round 1 was the lack of space for anywhere really to like mount GoPros and video and film, for film, which is important nowadays to a lot of the teams in their training. And I know, for me personally, it's important. But, round 2's venue allowed for that. But it was insanely hot. Like maybe an hour into it, you could just tell that there was no ventilation. As far as the overall flow and operations of the tournament, I thought it went well. Just the way. Well, actually, no, it went way better this time around. I think about it. Sorry, it's been so long. I know, week and a half. It's
a lifetime for dodgeball players.
I mean, I know I've been crazy slammed with school and everything. So, anyways, besides the point. Mark, the women's division, we got to go through an entire round robin this time around versus round 1. In order for us to do this, a bunch of the captains agreed that there would just be no break for the referees. Which was a little challenging when bathroom breaks were needed, because there was consistent back to back to back, and if you ref, you really have a moment to step off the court, or to get for an adequate bathroom break. But other than that, being able to play every team during round robins, I thought was the main and most important part of round 2 versus round 1.
Has that been an issue previously?
I'm so sorry?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Has that been like an issue previously, like in other previous rounds for last year? Like, does that usually happen with women's?
That's a really good question. I feel like I wouldn't be able to answer that because I'm new to the captaining thing and kind of. And so I know for round 1, it seems from the conversation that they were having, it seems that the women's division not getting enough court or playing time, or for as many teams that we have, we just didn't get enough court to complete a full round robin. So just thinking of the past from last year, but I know that it wasn't an issue that much
Gotcha.
administration, be able to express it around.
That's fair. Yeah, I just I don't know if that's just me not paying attention, but I think for open round one got cut off, but I don't know, for some reason that didn't seem like that bothered me too much to notice. It was like, oh well, we've got co-ed going still and all this other stuff, so I never really paid attention to how often things got shortened. But so I guess that's a good takeaway. I know a lot of people did complain about the humidity. They weren't expecting the heat and the lack of ventilation. I was talking with Allyn. They don't. There's a lot of buildings that don't have AC because it's Oregon. It's not like the desert that we're used to.
Yeah.
Did that impact your playing at all? I mean, I feel like that's kind of a dumb question, but I guess how did that impact your playing?
I mean, I definitely don't think it's a dumb question. I know a lot of players were suffering from heat rash and heat exhaustion. Personally, maybe this is me not paying attention. So, forgive me for I missed something, but I don't think I noticed it really affecting anyone up until co-ed started. I mean, I know people were complaining about how hot it was, but I didn't really see it take into effect until after the women's division was done. But I think maybe for me personally, at that point, my women's was over. My adrenaline was so high, so I was paying more attention to what was really going on. I don't know, but the heat did not affect my game during the women's division now, as far as my personal opinion. But I did see it. Make people. I did see people get sick from it later on in the day, for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of probably an abnormal amount of cramping and just people, just dealing with dehydration because I've been to Oregon a few times and it's gorgeous up there, and sometimes when you're in a nice environment, you don't think how quickly you can dehydrate yourself just by moving around, especially playing dodgeball. So I can definitely see maybe some adjustments being made for future tournaments. It was interesting because in the previous recording with Allyn, he was kind of talking about how geography is going to be like an issue now, or just something to consider. Like, oh, well, now humidity is a thing, or high altitude maybe is a thing. So I wonder if that's something that you guys took away from this round, or do you guys just always try to stay in the best shape when playing?
Yeah, I think it's more so. I think it's a little bit of both. I think with everything that happened with round two and the heat, I think people are going to be a little bit more aware of that.
Right.
At the same time, like you said, it was Oregon. Like no one really expected that to really happen in a gym setting like that. I think this is probably one of the first times it's happened because when I was, I had a brief conversation with Jake about it. Jake Mason, who was very upset with the club or the organization who hosted or owns the gym, very upset with the lack of communication they mentioned. I didn't mention anything to him. So
oh, wow.
Eventually all the emergency exit doors were open, but that didn't seem too much. Help wasn't the solution, and she was very, very upset. So, I think it's important for teams to think about geography, and I feel like they probably already do. You're going to go somewhere cold and pretty extra and things like that. But in general, everyone should stay fit. You're an elite, stay fit.
Yep. That's it's interesting you mentioned about like the GoPro accessibility or not being able to hang them up, because my first thought was like, yeah, that sucks. We don't get a good amount of highlights now. But when you said that impacts your ability to train, how much do you guys rely on film?
Speaking for myself, I watch it or I used to when I had the time. I used to watch it pretty religiously. So going into round one, I didn't really have any other commitments other than, adulting. And then from round one and round two, I actually went back to nursing school. So a lot of my priority has been towards that. And so I don't watch film the way I did prior to going into the program. But even now, since we've played since, 2 weeks ago, I guess, I've watched it a couple times already just to see I mean, there are a lot of things that you can point out, fundamental mistakes that we made as a team, and the video and having video is important so that we can highlight that. And I think it's different to talk about it, when a teammate points out, hey, you did this wrong, do this better. It's one thing to say it and verbalize that, but I feel like when you get to watch it yourself, then it really makes a bigger impact.
Right.
And better not to do that. There were moments where, a player of mine had a ball in their hand, and instead of blocking, they went for a catch that they probably should have just blocked. Things like one corner was moving up, without the other corner following or moving along with to protect, and so that corner is exposed, and that's an out right there. So those mistakes are things that help us, and that I value when we watch videos. And those are conversations, speaking for my team strictly, obviously, that's the things we point out to each other because it's important. And it's also fun to see the highlights too. You don't really get to see yourself. It's fun to watch yourself do really cool things on film.
Cool stuff for sure. So let's kind of talk about some of the teams. So obviously Pop That won. I almost want to ask, did they feel different than when you played against them during round one, or did that feel like a different team, or were you guys just kind of out of sync, or what happened there with that final match, if you can recall?
Fun question. We actually got to play Pop That. We got to play Pop That 3 times in Oregon, and we also got to play Money Shot 3 times in Oregon, both at round robin, and then in the bracket, and then we played both of them. Well, we played Pop That in finals and Money Shot in the semifinals. And as far as in comparison to round one, how I felt Pop That did, we beat Pop That during round robin 2-1. And it would have been 2-0, but I made the mistake of what a rookie mistake. We on a catch that we had, the wrong player came in, so we didn't do first out, first in. Skipped me. I was the first out. Definitely didn't go to me. Someone else came in, and then we forfeited that match because of my error, just simple error. So we played them for a third match, and then we took the third match. So we felt good going into after that win. We felt good about the rest of round robin and going into playoff. Anytime you beat a big team like Pop That or Invasion, it's definitely a confidence booster. And so going into playoffs, like I said, we felt good. I know this time they are missing Erica, who is currently recovering from a knee injury. And, that's a big player for them. That's a big player on the court and, off the court mentally and organizationally. I believe Brittany Mastro, mentioned how her role has to change in the Classic podcast that you guys had not so long ago. And her having to fill in almost like this emotional leadership role that Erica has. For Erica to still kind of be a part of the team and be on the sideline cheering them on, they still perform well. They're still a powerhouse. I think Cece was there. Cece played round one? I can't remember. Everything's so blurred. I don't remember Cece playing round one. But she, was MVP for Classic, and she played phenomenally also at Oregon. So I think, they're the ones that put us into the redemption bracket. So I think anytime you're coming from the redemption bracket, this is for me personally, I know some people have a different feel for it. I think it's almost heavier to have the pressure of winning, having to win twice, 4 times. And
you're saying it's kind of like it feels heavier when you're playing against a team that you have to beat twice for the finals.
Yeah, and maybe that's the mentality I guess I have. I've had conversations with veteran players who almost feel like the redemption bracket, there's almost like pressure, right? I don't know. And in general, for that we had a pretty tough start going into round two. You know, we played Elite Wednesday. Someone we held a league on Wednesday night for the women's team, which was great. We had to play like all ball types for like 5 weeks. So we did no sting before flying to Oregon. And, you know, our team we weren't jiving very well that Wednesday before round two. And, you know, after talking about it, a lot of it has to do with the pressures we were feeling of having to perform well. And, you know, the word soup was being thrown around, you know, regarding our win from round one. And so, you know, you can feel this sense like this just has this pressure to perform well and to almost prove that it wasn't. And so placing second was more than we could have asked for, to be honest with you. If anything, it just helped us prove that no, it wasn't a fluke, that we work hard and we've got a great team. The potential that we care is just, it's there, you know?
Yeah, and I was going to comment on that because you guys, like you said, Pop that knocked you guys into the redemption bracket, but then you played against. You had to go through the tough teams, if I may say so. You had to play against Money Shot, and from my recollection, they're like the top three that I would think of. Invasion didn't make it past them. Neither did Beavers. No offense to them, but it seems like with this second round, the statement was, like you said, you guys, it was not a fluke win. You guys definitely deserve to be top two at this point. And so I'm really curious to see how round three plays out. And it's just it's cool to see another player in the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of teams that just are getting better and better. Beauty and the Beast mode.
Nice.
The North South team, I believe they're from. They've been improving. Like from classic till round two, you can just see the improvement. Not only in their players, but they're working together well and going for them. And trophy wise, they came out first seed this time around for brackets. They upset so many teams, and they're just looking really, really, really good. So yeah, it's going to be a really fun, really competitive West round three. I'm excited.
Were there any?
There were, just to add on to that too, like with the levels of like how much more competitive I believe round three will be. Is I think a majority of the players that were missing from round two, like, and I'm talking big players, H wasn't there for Ride or Die this time, round two. Ryan Johnson wasn't there. I think Beavers had a few players I can't remember who were delegated to. But yeah, I think with everyone showing up for round three, it's gonna be a tough one.
Yeah, it's everybody's going to be there in full force. The only person I know that wasn't there for Beavers was Stephanie Lynch, and I know she's an impact player for them. So I'm curious, like, what would it have been like if she was there?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, I don't want to pick on anybody, but I was expecting Pop That, Lovetap, and Invasion for top three. But then you look at Money Shot, and then they have every right to be there as well. So it could be. I feel like it's anybody's game. It's whoever takes the lessons from round two and applies them into round three, who has their full roster. And teams like Ride or Die or Witness or Beavers, they're not going to be that far behind on the heels either. So it's cool watching this all unfold over a series of rounds.
Yeah.
Were there any like teams or players that stood out that you can kind of recall? I know it's been a couple weeks already, but any people that stood out in your mind?
Okay, so I was thinking about this because I felt like you were going to ask this.
Awesome.
A good one. It's a good one. It is, but I feel with everything that Lovetap and what I was doing, what I was kind of going through, I didn't really, and I'm sorry for everyone, I didn't really pay attention much to other people besides the people, my players, and how well we were doing and how, everyone's mentality was. Opposed from, I think my players, Amy Biascan and Casey Reed really, really stepped it up this round. I am, so excited to play with them, but they had some killer plays and consistent throughout the playoffs that got us to the finals. Like you said, we played huge teams going into it. So, that was crucial to our success that we had. Against us, there were some crazy, awesome, there was a crazy play by Alyssa Pandolfi from Ride or Die. She, off the rush, took out Karina and caught Kiki right after. It was like the craziest thing. And I don't know if that, that gave them that boost. But after that, Ride or Die kicked their butt. 2-0, I believe. I don't remember. And this was in round robin. And then trophy-wise, specifically, their performance and them seeding first. I don't remember them seeding very high in round one. But for them to seed in first, you can tell. And I know, Nina is a good friend. She's been working very, very hard. Lots of hard work in getting back and, doing what she needs to do for her team and for USA Dodgeball. A lot of these ladies from the West especially are going to Texas in 2 weeks, compete for a spot on the USA team. So, so Nina's been one of those. She's been working really, really hard at it. And you can see that definitely in her game. And then Meg is back. Meg Becker is back. She was looking solid during round two, especially after, what happened at round one. So happy to see her back. Other players that performed well. It was really nice to see Jess Sexton back on the court. I know she has been playing in the West Side as often since she's moved. But to see her in a Fuego jersey, and Fuego being, I think, a team to look out for, especially in round three, with Bev Riva and Ryan Johnson and Jess on the roster, it's gonna be a tough one.
Nice.
Emmy's been looking really consistent throughout the season so far. Alex Jensen's been looking really, really solid throughout the season so far as well. So Fuego's gonna be a team to look out for. And I still believe that Invasion is going to surprise everyone. I think that the past two elites might have been just a fluke for them because they've, the Classic was proof that they're still a powerhouse. And I'm expecting big things from them as well.
Definitely. I was going to say regarding Bev Rivas, I think this is like the third recap in a row that I've actually heard her name pop up. So I'm really curious to see if I can match the face with the name and see how she impacts Fuego in round three. And I think what you said was solid with Invasion. I don't think they're down for the count yet.
Not at all. I think they're still just finding their groove.
Yeah, and I'm sure once it's found, it's going to be pretty scary.
Yeah, round three is going to be a good time, definitely. And I think maybe with the pressures of the combine being done by then, like a lot of these players will place that focus back on no sting and elite, and maybe that will change. Also, I can't say how that's affected anyone at round two because I believe the invites were sent out maybe like a week and a half before, and it's a huge deal. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that was something people were thinking about at elite round two, playing against people that you're ultimately trying out against for a spot on USA Dodgeball. So
yeah,
for the USA team.
Unless you're like made of
I'm so
100%
sorry. I'm
stone.
feeling super scatterbrained right now. I'm so sorry, Steve.
No worries. I was just gonna say, unless you're like super just made of stone, like I'm pretty sure that would impact anybody. Even just a slight bit, just to know that you have potential to play on Team USA and you're gonna go to the combine in a couple of weeks. That plus the travel. Again, just to reference the conversation I had with Allyn, it's they had the home field advantage. They got to have a full night's rest. They didn't have to travel. They weren't flying in. They were. I don't want to say like I don't want to make excuses for anybody, but just different elements can impact people in different ways. So it's going to be fun to see. San Diego's an hour and a half from LA, and it's what we're all pretty much used to, even us in Arizona. So curious to see how it's going to play out. It should be a great tournament. I'm expecting just competition across all divisions. Definitely want to see you guys take first and continue that. It's just
Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool to watch. I definitely want to point towards round 3 with this final question, and that is there anything that you're planning on doing differently for round 3 or in preparation for round 3? You guys being Lovetap.
What will Lovetap do in preparation for round 3? I think that with round 2 out of the way and with a second, a runner-up seed against the team that they wanted their revenge, rightfully so. I think that for us is to just keep doing what we're doing. I think it feels better this time because there's not like a doubt in our mind that this was a fluke or this was because someone else slept on us or whatever it may be. Well, whatever it may be. I think that there is a huge potential for us to, maintain what we've already done in the past 2 rounds. But it's also very important for us to just, again, continue the hard work outside of dodgeball and maintain, our fitness and to stay healthy and avoid injury and to just go into round 3 the way we've been doing with no expectation, take one game at a time and just play dodgeball because that's kind of how we've been able to get to do what we've done already is just take it one game at a time, no pressure, and just play.
Nice.
And watch some film maybe. There's a lot of crazy mistakes that happen in the finals game that drive me nuts. So I mean, it's crazy because we're this new team. We don't really talk plays or things like that much often because it's hard for us to. We're still learning to play with one another. We're still, learning each other's play style in general and how we can make that mesh. And thankfully so far it has. So when I literally say take each game, one at a time and just play, that's what we're doing. We're just playing. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean it's round 3, but there's still a lot of dodgeball left between that and nationals. So, and not to mention everything else that's going on with the other tournaments. So, cool. Well, that's all I have. What's up?
Nope, that's it.
Oh, okay, cool.
So we'll
Yeah,
right there.
Go ahead and end the interview there. Alrighty, so that was a not so great recap of the Elite West Round 2 tournament that took place. A lot has happened this past week, and I do want to apologize for that. Definitely feeling the pressure of living the civilian / soldier life. In fact, I'm actually going to be gone for the next 2 weeks, so depending on when this episode releases, there might be one more before I take a break. If not, sorry. But I do want to say thank you so much to Allyn Thomas for stepping up and taking on covering both open and co-ed. And I do really want to thank Crystal for being a good sport and doing her best to help me recap women's while on the road. Like I said, it was just really hard trying to get a good time to work out between the both of us, but she was willing to make it work, and I do appreciate that greatly. However, I do want to apologize one final time for the quality. I definitely pride myself on the ability to get people to sound really good. So I'm sure Nick, my editor, you probably hate me right now, but hopefully it came out all right. And like I said, I definitely wanted to cover something and not just completely let it slip by. I am very much looking forward to round 3, though. It just sounds like it's going to be a glorious battleground, just paving the way to nationals, and I could not be more excited to be able to participate, even from a sound booth. I guess with that being said, have a great rest of your week, and so long as things go well, there should be one more episode this Friday with the North Round 2 recap with, I'm not even going to say it. I don't want to jinx myself, so I'll just leave it at that. Have a great night, and I'll catch you next time. All right, I think I got it this time in 3, 2, 1. So that was a recap of the Elite Rest W's, man, so hard.